This is a certified
Big Podcast
classic.
The last episode, I talked about AI, how a lot of people are scared about it. But there's another podcast killer on the loose, man. Right now, maybe in your studio. We're going to dive into that. I'm David Hooper. It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. If you want to grow your podcast, you are in the right place. And that means getting people to your podcast, getting people talking about your podcast, making a podcast that people care about, making a podcast that people will miss if you are gone. This is the place for you. You can find me at bigpodcast.com. This is the audio edition of my weekly newsletter. That is called Big Podcast Insider. You can find it and subscribe to it. Get it via email every Friday morning, New York City time at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 222. Here's what we're talking about. The podcast killer. 27 ways to increase web and podcast traffic. Why Joe Rogan dropped in number 2. Mango form. What? I'll tell you about it. Just say no. How to make it on YouTube or podcasting. Your choice. But they are two different things. This episode of Build a Big Podcast is brought to you by Riverside.fm, a virtual studio that makes recording and editing at the highest quality possible accessible to anyone. You're going to look and sound your best with Riverside. It records you and your guests, that's plural, and your co-hosts, or co-hosts, plural, locally. That means wherever you are in the world, however many people you have on your podcast, you're going to bypass poor and unstable internet connections and get studio quality audio and video. Started the episode talking about AI. A lot of people scared of it. You don't need to be scared of it. Check this out. Riverside has some great AI-powered features that will help you to not only produce your podcast, but also promote it. Things like automated silence removal and filler word removal. You want to do that? Yeah, you can do it with AI. Also, magic clips. I love this. It's going to save you a lot of time. It goes through your long-form podcast content. It finds the segments that it thinks are interesting. Boom! You got social media clips automatically. You want to check it out? You can do it. Riverside.fm. Go there right now. Get a free account. They're going to give you a couple hours. You can take a look, kick the tires, do an interview, do a couple of interviews. See how you like it. Record with it. Edit with it. Promote your podcast with it. I got a discount code for you. Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. That's going to get you 15% off. Get the free account at Riverside.fm. Take a look. See how you like it. If you want to stick around, Big Podcast. That's the discount code. 15% off with the code BIGPODCAST. All right, you know how it works. I'm going from thing to thing to thing, all of them about podcasting. And this, that's the demarcation point. That's how you know. If you want more information, if you want the links, if you want to see what I wrote about this stuff and not just listen to me talk about it, you can find all those things at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 222. You ready? Podcast killer. I've seen a lot of stuff over the last week or so talking about how YouTube is going to kill podcasts. And there were some interesting stats, something like 8.1 bajillion podcasts on YouTube. They're not really podcasts on YouTube. They're video shows. I mean, some people put their audio podcast and even video podcasts on YouTube. That's great. Do it. But that's not necessarily your competition. It is a different world. YouTube is not going to kill podcasts. Just to be clear, I'm not anti-YouTube by any means. There's a lot of stuff that we can learn from people who post videos on YouTube. One of those things is the successful creators on YouTube are great about getting attention quickly and also building communities around their videos. Talked about Joe Rogan dropping from number 1 to number 2. A big part of Joe Rogan's success, it's not the podcast, it's the community that he has built in YouTube comments. That makes people part of the show. You can do something similar for your podcast. I got some big picture things we're going to go over in this episode. We're going to talk about traffic. We're going to talk about audience building. Again, all the links to everything that I'm talking about, you will find them. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 222. Real quick, I want to talk about Big Podcast AMP. If you like this podcast, if you like the newsletter, you're going to love Big Podcast AMP, the audio monetization program. Just talked about community. Big Podcast AMP is your podcaster community. It's also personal coaching. I'm going to help you do 3 things. 1, grow your podcast audience. 2, get people talking about your podcast. And 3, making money with your podcast and your podcasting skills. If you can talk, and I hope you can because you're a podcaster. And if you can't, we're going to get you better at it. You can make money with those skills. You want more information? This is how to do it. Go to bigpodcast.com/amp. That's bigpodcast.com/AMP. 27 ways to increase web and podcast traffic. Some good ideas here. I've got all 27 of them listed at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Again, issue number 222. These will help you get more traffic to your website and your podcast. But here's one thing that stands out as far as the overall framework for whatever you create: an audio podcast, a video podcast, a YouTube show. EEAT stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. If you have those things, you are going to do well, not only with people who listen to you, but with Google. Basically, this is Google's way of asking, are you the real deal? Again, EAT, E-E-A-T, experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Anybody can throw up a shingle. Anybody can have a website. Anybody can have a podcast. How do we know you're the real deal? The way Google used to do this was links. It was the number of links. It was links from high-quality sites. And if you don't know the history of Google, these were two university guys. What they noticed on the web was that the real deal stuff had more links to it. It had links from other researchers, other universities, important sites. That still works. It's a foundation of Google. But of course, with AI, going back to this thing, we can analyze all sorts of other information, like, are people talking about you? Not just linking to you, but talking about you. Let's go down these one by one. Experience. Have you lived or practiced what you're talking about? Are you out in the world? Are people talking about you? Do you have publications, books, newsletters, podcasts, YouTube videos, interviews? Expertise. Do you have the skills and insights to support what you say? Again, Google knows, man. AI, all this analysis that we've got for content, whatever you put out into the world, it can be analyzed against what everybody else is putting out into the world. If you're saying something of good quality, it makes sense, people are talking about it, Google knows. AI knows. You're viewed as an expert, you're going to get more traffic. Authoritativeness. Are you seen as a credible leader or resource in your field? And this is really where other people talking about you come in. Like I said, Google, it was based on other people linking to certain sites. The more people that link to you, the more important those other sites are. That's how you're being judged on Google. So get out there, make yourself a credible leader. How do you do it? Well, one, have a podcast. And you do. I hope you do. If you don't, what are you waiting for? But good job being here. Number 4, trustworthiness. Can listeners count on your information to be accurate and reliable? Again, your stuff is being analyzed. It may not be fact-checked by all the listeners that you've got, each individual listener, but it is being fact-checked by AI, through databases. I don't mean to get big brothered on you, but everything we put out, people are looking at it. Computers are looking at it. It is being categorized. And this isn't some kind of crazy conspiracy theory. This simply has to do with there is a lot of stuff out there. We need some way to categorize this stuff, just like Google did back in the day with the number of links, the importance of places that we're linking to places. We've got new ways of doing this. This is one of those ways. EAT, E-E-A-T, experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. You make episodes with those elements, you do other things with those elements, you will attract listeners. That's one of 27. Interested? I got all this stuff linked and I've got more information. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 222. Joe Rogan forever has been the number one podcast in the world. He lost that number one ranking to an anti-Trump podcast. The email and web version of this newsletter, when it came out, this was the situation. Midas Touch, it's a left-wing podcast, number 1. Joe Rogan, number 2. As of right now, me recording this a couple days later, Joe Rogan, number 1 again. It happens. But let me tell you why he slipped to number 2. This is something I used to do in the music business. We were trying to make an album go number 1. This is something that's going to make your podcast go up the charts, get more attention for it. Because once you hit these charts, more and more people see you. What do? They see you, they download you, you go further up the charts. Think about these guys unseating Joe Rogan. I'm talking about it. A bunch of people are talking about it. Well, they're getting more listeners because of it. All right, cool. And they had enough of those listeners to at least stay there for a while. Are they in the top 5, top 10? Yeah, they're going to be there for a while. This, ironically, is also why Joe Rogan is number 1. Not just the YouTube comments that I mentioned earlier, but everybody's talking about him. Somebody's got to be number 1. The number 1 guy gets talked about a lot. Here's what's going on right now, though, why he was number 2 for a minute. We are in a situation known as the Trump bump. And this is something that is happening with all political podcasts. They are getting a boost. This happened in 2016. It is happening now that Trump is in office. By the way, it's not anything to do with pro-Trump or anti-Trump. It just is. Everybody's talking about Trump right now, one or the other usually, pro or anti. And because so many people are talking about it, people are looking up information on him. This is the big lesson, and this is something that you can do for your podcast. The big lesson is the power of concentrated focus. As I mentioned a minute ago, Rogan was on top because everybody was talking about him. Right now, everybody talking about Donald Trump. Those who support him, they need a place to go. Those who don't support him, they need a place to go. And they are concentrating on this one podcast, Midas Touch. All those people putting their focus on that one podcast, downloading that one podcast, telling their friends about that one podcast. That's how it hit number one. You want to grow a big podcast? Give people who are talking about you someplace to go. That is it. And if they're not talking about you, create something about something people are already talking about. Give those people a place to go. That is a huge heads up. Do not reinvent the wheel. Enter a conversation that is already existing. You want more thoughts on this? Links to the podcast? Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 222. Mango Form. This is a Typeform clone. It is for a one-time fee. I think it's $25 or so. Are you familiar with Typeform? It is an excellent form building tool. A lot of people use it. But you're sick of monthly payments, pay this one-time fee. This is the reason I'm mentioning it. It's got a great story, man. This is what gets people talking. Again, something you can do with your podcast. This developer, he's 19 years old, broke college student. That's the story. He said, man, I got sick of paying monthly fees. I created my own thing, charge people once. It lets you do forms with multiple choice, rating scales, smart logic, meaning some people get asked some questions, some people get asked other questions. Skip logic, meaning if I say, are you a podcaster? And you tell me no, I don't ask you the name of your podcast because you don't have one. Branding and responses, you can put your podcast or company name at the top of these forms. Also, it is mobile ready. That is so important today. And look, I don't get it, except I do get it sometimes. If I'm out and about, say you're giving a speech, you say, you want to get in touch with me? Here's how to do it. This is my form. Give me a QR code. I scan it on my mobile device, write you an email. That's nice. Scan your subscribe link on my mobile phone, subscribe to your podcast. I get that. So it's important to have mobile ready stuff. This will do it. Also, if you've got somebody on a desktop, they're going to send you a more formal email. Yeah, you can do it, man. This thing does it all. Mango Form, I think $25 now. I don't know. The price started low, like maybe $15. It's getting a little bit higher. 25, very reasonable. He's got some other cool tools coming up, by the way. A calendar. He's got a Linktree clone. This guy got angry about recurring fees. He said, man, I'm going to make my own. Charge people once. That's exactly what he's doing. His Typeform clone is called Mango Form. I've got a link for it at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 222. Just say no. This is a gentle reminder to you that it is okay to say no to publicists, agents, and even potential guests themselves. I feel like there's a part of the brain, people will call it shame, fear of rejection, something like that. Publicists don't have that part of their brain. They have no fear of rejection, which means they can come to you. Hey, podcaster, I've got this exciting guest. He's an entrepreneur. He's a thought leader. You want to book him? 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 You can't ignore these people. Turn the corner. Want to book him? Want to book him? Want to book him? Want to book him? You think they go away? Boom! They come right back. Want to book him? Want to book him? Want to book him? It's okay for you to say no to these people. They will wear you down trying to interview their clients. Do they care about your podcast? No. They care about getting a placement for their clients. And look, in general, I love publicists. Some of them are amazing. I've had publicists send me amazing people. However, when they send me some not so amazing people, because again, they work for somebody else, not me. They're looking out for their client's interest. You got to tell them no. So the next time a publicist shows up and says, want to book him? 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 Tell them no. No, you don't want to book him. unless you do want to book it. Hey, I got a funny joke related to this. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 222. How to make it on YouTube or podcasting. Two different things. Do I need to say that again? They are two different things. Neither's better than the other. They're just different. Now, sometimes there'll be situations where one is better than the other. For example, I can't watch a YouTube video when I'm driving, at least not safely. Podcast is much better for that. Washing dishes, especially the knives, yeah, podcast is better for that. But YouTube is great too. And these are some things to consider regardless of whether you're doing YouTube or podcasting. I've got a video for you. It is linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 222. It is about the evolution of social media platforms, the concept of followers, and the implications of algorithm-driven content discovery in the current creator economy. What that means is that for a lot of people, especially those on YouTube, but also TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, we are slaves to the algorithm. And you know this because if you're on Instagram, let's say you set up a new account. You've got 10 friends. You say subscribe, 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 follow, follow, follow. 10 people that you want to watch and keep in touch with. You are going to get more than just those people. And if you were to go and follow or subscribe to 100 people, even if all of them post daily, you will not see all those people. You will see some of those people in addition to other people that you didn't subscribe to or didn't follow that Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whomever feels that you will like and interact with. Why? Because they want to keep you on these apps. This is a video about the death of followers or subscribers. What he's saying is the traditional notion of followers as a measure of success is obsolete. Historically, we had that. We do not have that anymore. He talks about TikTok's disruption. TikTok is insane, man. I think the stat is 8 minutes of being on TikTok. You like it, you don't like it. You like it, you don't like it. You subscribe, you follow, whatever. Within 8 minutes, that algorithm knows a lot about you, and it can feed you more of what you like and less of what you don't. 8 minutes, and it's got you figured out. This video talks about the impact on creators, creativity versus metrics. Are you being creative or are you playing to the algorithm? I know an old school country songwriter did a lot of stuff for Alan Jackson, and then he walked away. I was talking to him about it. I said, what'd you do that for, man? You had a good thing going. And he said, I got sick of living and dying by the charts. And I've thought about that almost daily since then. Because I found myself in that world too. We all do as podcasters. And especially if you're creating something to market or for the algorithm, like on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, you are living and dying by the charts. We used to do this with Google. One day you're great. One day the algorithm decides, yeah, I'm going to show a little less of this guy. 2 days later, you're done, man. Your traffic is done. It's exhausting. I know some guys who are getting into this, they have a little bit of a hit, you know? Then they start wearing themselves out. The way they describe it, it's almost like doing drugs. You ever know anybody who's done heroin, crack? Hard drug. Most of them will tell you something like this. They'll say, I did it and it was amazing. And ever since then, I've been chasing that first time. And it has never, ever, 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 ever been as good. Yet they're going to keep chasing it. Podcasters and other content creators are driving themselves crazy trying to follow the algorithm. And here's what happens if you do. Say you got a podcast about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, but coffee's really popular. Brown rice is really popular. So you go, okay, maybe I can do a video on coffee and I'll do one on brown rice. I'm really into He-Man, but just this once, try to catch some of that traffic, I want to do something a little bit different. Your coffee video takes off. Your brown rice video takes off. Then you got all this traffic from people who are interested in coffee and brown rice. All you want to do is talk about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Then where are you? I see a lot of people get into those situations. You start to create things that you have no interest in other than what you consider to be easy traffic. Let me take it back to a music business example. I talked about making albums number one, having hits in the music industry. This is how to do that. And this is also how to have success on YouTube or in podcasting. You do you. Keep showing up. The things that I listed earlier, the experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, keep doing that. Eventually, whatever you're doing, it's like 10,000 monkeys on 10,000 typewriters. They will eventually have a great novel. You, in much less time, will eventually have something that comes around and that people find interesting. And maybe it's not going to be the next Harry Potter or the next Taylor Swift or the next Super Bowl. But remember, this is a big world, and there are enough people in this world that will be interested in what you are doing that you can do very well. Creativity versus metrics. I was hanging out with a friend of mine last year. She'd gone through a divorce, quit a job she'd been in about 12 years. I was telling her about my own situation, my own career ups and downs, really chasing the money, thinking I wanted a big company with a lot of employees, that kind of thing. And she said, maybe we should think about what success is and redefine it for where we are now. And I'm going to ask you that same question. Do you need to redefine success? I think it's logical for a lot of people because maybe you didn't understand exactly what you were getting into to say, yeah, I want a big company. I want a lot of people working under me. I want to do this. I want to do that, whatever. Do you really want it now? Have you found yourself in a situation that maybe isn't what you thought it was with podcasting otherwise? Well, consider it. I've written up a lot of stuff about this, how to make it in YouTube or podcasting at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 222. There's also the video. It's a long one. I summarized it for you. You do not have to go through the whole thing, but if you want to, you can do that. Both the video and my thoughts on a lot of this information, you'll find those things at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 222. Hey, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for sticking it out with me. You can find me at bigpodcast.com. If you want to subscribe to this podcast, make sure you never miss an episode. That's where to do it. Bigpodcast.com. I've got 3 buttons for you, one for iPhone, one for Android. One is an RSS feed for you old school podcasters. Yeah, man, I got you covered. One click is all it takes. Bigpodcast.com. That is where to go. While you're at bigpodcast.com, you want to work with me? Hey, we can do it, man. We can make it happen. Best way to do it for independent podcasters is what I call Big Podcast AMP. AMP, that stands for Audio Monetization Program. You will find it at bigpodcast.com. If you want to go directly to it, you will find it at bigpodcast.com/AMP. That's bigpodcast.com/AMP. Also on that site, you will find a direct way to reach out to me. It's a form, just like I talked about. Not Mango form, but something similar. Again, thanks for listening to me. Go to bigpodcast.com. Do get hooked up on a free subscription, and I'll see you next time on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast.